D.C. The new Foreign Affairs Secretary issues a strong statement. The Education Department is requiring schools to hold in-person classes before the year ends. AC Nichols tells us what the DepEd plans to do when COVID-19 cases increase.
In about 4 months, in-person classes are projected to be back in full swing. Education officials, through a department order, are directing all public and private schools to operate on full capacity by November 2.
And everybody who is enrolled should abide by the department order, and parents are also encouraged to ensure that their students go to school. Again, we're trying to do some education or learning recovery, so this is the right time for us to undertake the face-to-face.
Classes in public schools will begin on August.
Time for us to undertake the face-to-face.
Classes in public schools will begin on August 22. The Department of Education, or DepEd, says schools should slowly undergo the transition to full capacity operation, from thrice a week in-person classes to 4 and then 5 times a week.
Hindi ho sila natututo masyado sa bahay, mga online lang ho eh. Kaya gusto ho namin face-to-face na po.
Kasi meron na yung apo ko, may bakuna na eh. Face-to-face daw gusto niya.
Teachers groups welcome the move, saying physical classes are critical in addressing the learning gaps in a remote setup. However, they ask for more personnel to ensure quality of education and the safety of students. Hiring more teachers, they say, can help reduce class size in public schools. In urban areas, some classes hold up to 100 students.
Kailangan po natin matiyak na yung mga bata ay hindi magsiksikan sa school, no? Baka congested yung ating classrooms, no? So tingin namin, no, at least po at 25 no per classroom po, no? So per class, no? I mean, ano, at yung teacher po natin talagang madadagdagan yung teaching load niya.
Based on the department order, students are not required to get inoculated against COVID-19. Wearing of masks is mandatory, and physical distancing must be observed whenever possible. So what happens when COVID-19 cases continue to go up?
Regardless of the alert level, tuloy ang face-to-face. However, DepEd will give in and follow if the IATF, Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases, would decide that a certain local government unit will lock down or would recommend or approve that certain classes in a specific region or local government unit would go back to this distance learning. So tingnan po natin yan on a case-to-case basis.
Education Chief Sara Duterte earlier said she will push for full in-person classes to address the negative impacts of the health crisis on Filipino students. AC Nichols, CNN Philippines.
But a private schools group wants the DepEd to allow blended learning beyond November. The Coordinating Council for Private Educational Associations, or KAGABHION, says some parents do not want to send their children back to the classroom amid rising COVID-19 cases. DepEd notes it will continue holding dialogues with KAGABHION, but had this to say.
The directive and the policy right now is to, again, go back to full face-to-face. I believe from today until October 31, they will have enough time to be able to prepare their health protocols and school or classroom infrastructure requirements to ensure that there's safety and protection of the students during the whole time that the face-to-face will now be implemented starting November 2.
The Health Department sees a possible peak in COVID-19 cases by the end of this month. Health spokesperson Maria Rosario Vergere says the number of daily infections may hit 11,000 because of increased mobility and low booster uptake. Vergere adds there could be more hospitalizations by the end of August or September. This comes after the country recorded nearly 80 new cases of the more transmissible Omicron subvariants in less than a week. From July 7 to 11, the Health Department logged 60 BA.5 cases, 58 in Western Visayas, and 1 each in Davao Region and Soxargen. The DOH also tallied 17 more cases of the BA.2.12.1 and 2 BA.4 infections. But Vergere clarifies there is still no community transmission of the subvariants.
Kailangan kompletohin po namin yung analysis namin. And as we have said, hindi pa ho natin nagagawa yung verification itong mga kasong bagong lumabas para masabi po natin na really wala tayong sources of infection. Base rin po sa pag-aaral at rekomendasyon ng ating eksperto, bagamat naapektuhan ang ating pong immunity, yung primary series naman po kahit papaano may laban pa rin naman sa atin. At saka yung booster na binibigay sa atin, may laban pa rin yung mga current formulation ng bakuna natin. Ibig sabihin, kahit po hindi siya very specific to Omicron, ito po ay nakakapagbigay pa rin ng proteksyon sa ating mga kababayan.
Officials are raising the alarm over higher cases of another disease. The health department says 15 out of 17 regions have surpassed the epidemic threshold for dengue. Ilocos is yet to reach the limit, while dengue cases in Caraga were not sustained. Carolyn Bonkin explains how responders on the ground are working to prevent further rise in infections.
Priscilla Reyes' family is making time to get rid of stagnant water in their yard. While it's tedious work, she knows this needs to be done. Their yard has many catch rainwater. Her 4-year-old granddaughter is still in the hospital for dengue.
Naaalis naman. Yung nagtag-ulan, hindi na namin maasikaso na kasi minsan ang hirap palisin pag umuulan, pagkabasa.
Last Sunday, barangay staff also left larvae traps here to help them find dengue-carrying mosquitoes to prevent an outbreak. These are planted 300 meters from a dengue patient's house and other possible mosquito breeding grounds.
These are just two of the larvae traps placed within the compound where a young patient with dengue fever lives. There are a couple more on the side of the house in dark and damp places where mosquitoes most likely breed.
After 5 days, sina-harvest siya. Kasi doon nag-iitlog na yung lamok. Papatest namin sa health center yun. If yung lamok ba yun is positive for dengue or negative siya. Magla-larvicidal spraying kami.
Like many villages, Barangay Rojas sees more dengue cases recently compared to last year, especially this rainy season. Of 9 cases since January, 3 residents got dengue in June, 1 in July. The barangay chairwoman, who's also a physician, is asking those with dengue symptoms to get checked immediately before their condition worsens, like their 2 residents. While barangay workers do clean up and larvicidal spraying, community's help is needed in getting rid of mosquitoes.
Yung mga water storage ayusin nila, dapat lagi may takip. Takip nga ng tansa na may water, pwedeng mag-itlog ang lamok dyan. Dapat panatilihin nating malinis lagi yung paligid natin. Yung tamang pagsasegregate, pagsasaayos ng mga basura.
And those with pets are advised to regularly clean their cages.
Yung mga nababasa po na mga kahoy, doon po sumisiksik ang tubig, mga larvae po natin. Mas gusto po nila doon, lalo na hindi sila nade-disturb.
Aside from Quezon City, most of the 6,000 cases in Metro Manila as of July 10th are in Caloocan, Taguig, Manila, and Valenzuela. 16 died. In Central Luzon, health workers are mobilizing communities to help search and destroy mosquito breeding sites. Dengue cases there from January 1 to July 2 reach over 11,000, also higher than last year, mostly from Bulacan. In eastern Samar, health workers are fogging or spraying in hotspot areas. As of July 9, they had nearly 2,700 dengue cases. 9 died. Carolyn Bonkin, CNN Philippines.
In other news, the Army is planning to move its ammunition depots away from civilian populations after an ammunition dump of the 4th Infantry Division caught fire in Cagayan de Oro City. A series of powerful blasts were felt within a 2-kilometer radius on Tuesday midnight. 3 people sustained minor injuries, while over 50 families were forced to flee to safety. Videos of the incident were uploaded on social media, making Camp Evangelista trend on Twitter.
Image yung sa kanilang isipan na inaatake yung mismong headquarters ng 4th Infantry Division, which is never true. Humingi tayo ng paumanhin sa mga residente ng Cagayan and nearby provinces.
A photograph of the aftermath shows the blast was contained in an isolated area. The investigation is still ongoing. A look on the weather now. Metro Manila will continue to have rains this evening, partly because of the low-pressure area near Aurora Province. Pagasa says the LPA was last seen 180 kilometers east of Casiguran town. Cloudy skies with scattered rain showers will also be felt in western Visayas, Central Luzon, Calabar Zone, Mimaropa, Bicol, Isabela, Quirino, and Nueva Vizcaya. The rest of the country will have partly cloudy to cloudy skies with isolated rain showers because of the southwest monsoon or habagat and localized thunderstorms. Coming up on Newsnight, President Marcos names his environment secretary, but Malacanang says it has yet to be finalized. And Japanese mourners pay their last respects to former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. You're watching CNN Philippines.
Gamma mangosteen. MX3 capsule helps avoid pain discomfort para iwas sakit. Tested and proven na low sodium, cholesterol-free, at fat-free. Dito ako sa tunay, natural at original. MX3.
Mahalagang paalala, ang MX3 capsule ay hindi gamot at hindi dapat gamiting panggamot sa anumang uri ng sakit.
Fried chicken? Timplang happy! With easy-to-cook Magnolia Chicken Timplados. Iba't ibang sarap ng chicken, kaya. Anong Magnolia Chicken Timplados mo? Iba't ibang easy chicken sarap. It'll life you have a So choose not sa banding ng barkada, GSM Blue ang kasama. We choose GSM Blue. Choose my strong. Dahil ito ang GSM Blue.
Beyond bringing power to all, we're taking steps to produce and deliver Earth-friendly energy today and for our children's tomorrow. Powering the good life. Meralco.
Welcome back to CNN Philippines. President Bongbong Marcos nominates a disaster resilience expert as the new secretary. Bongbong Marcos nominates a disaster resilience expert as the new secretary of the Environment Department. Malacanang says Mr. Marcos is looking to appoint Tony Yulo Loizaga as DNR chief, subject to the fulfillment of required documents. Yulo Loizaga was chairperson of the International Advisory Board of the Manila Observatory, where she advocated for more scientific research on climate and disaster resilience. She was also technical advisor of the Philippine Disaster Resilience Foundation. Lawyer Rafael Lotilla is not yet the Energy Secretary. That's according to Press Secretary Trixie Cruz Angeles. She explains Lotilla, who is Mr. Marcos's choice to lead the agency, is currently an independent director of Aboitiz Power and Enexor. The law states no officer of any private company shall be eligible as secretary within 2 years from his or her retirement or resignation. Angeles adds it has yet to be determined if Lotilla is an officer of the company. Meanwhile, Solicitor General Menardo Guevara says they will discuss the matter internally and study any legal repercussions of Lotilla's appointment. President Marcos leads his second cabinet meeting virtually as he recovers from COVID-19. Budget officials laid down recommendations to improve the 2023 spending plan amid the crisis. Other topics include transportation programs and the Build, and infrastructure projects. Cabinet officials stayed at the Presidential Guest House in Malacanang for the meeting. More than half of Filipinos want the new Marcos administration to prioritize rising inflation. A survey conducted by Pulse Asia last month shows 57% of Filipinos worry about the increasing prices of basic goods and services. Inflation hits its fastest rate in nearly 4 years in June at 6.1%. Other urgent concerns include wages, poverty, and job creation. Filipinos also want the government to fight corruption and criminality and to provide subsidies for those who lost their livelihood because of the pandemic. Only 7% of Filipinos see the need for the new administration to stop the spread of COVID-19 despite increasing cases. The survey was conducted among 1,200 respondents who were allowed to choose up to 3 concerns. President Marcos vows to address the concerns of Filipinos hit by soaring prices, but what exactly can consumers expect from the administration? Lois Calderon tells us how the chief executive plans to steer economic recovery.
Consumer prices are high, triggered by a series of external events. the falling value of the peso against the dollar that makes paying record-high national debt even more expensive. And then the threat of a global recession. President Bongbong Marcos will hit the ground running in addressing these issues that are now affecting ordinary households. All need immediate attention. But what poses the biggest challenge?
Our agriculture is in crisis.
Food security is a concern of every Filipino, and Mr. Marcos has decided to take on the agriculture portfolio instead of appointing someone to do this difficult job. US-based investment advisor Global Source Partners believes that's a bold move, as the president has the political capital to convince Congress, with his allies in the supermajority, to push for agricultural reforms. But by not providing a person he can fire if things go south, his decision could also be his first fumble. Comments from experts have a common theme. Taming food and fuel prices should be the economic team's first order of business. London-based think tank Capital Economics already revised interest rate hike forecasts to bring the Bangko Central's benchmark rate to 3.5% by year-end. That's to control rising consumer prices. It expects inflation to peak soon.
As long as the government lets the central bank do its work, then eventually inflation will fall out. But it is a big concern and a big challenge at the moment.
The fact that the Marcos economic team has been consistent with its remarks comforts investors. The research unit of global debt watcher Fitch Ratings says Philippine debt might have seen its worst. It's confident the new administration can get the fiscal house in order.
If you look at some of the other metrics which you'd use to measure the health of a country's public finances in terms of the share of government spending that is used to pay off debt, interest rates, they're all quite low. And so we're not at the moment concerned about public.
Marcos wants to narrow the budget deficit to just 3% by the end of his term in 2028.
Focus should be on tax administration first. The way to outgrow this high debt to GDP ratio, although our debt to GDP ratio is fairly manageable, I think globally the debt to GDP ratio is nearing around 300%. Ours is only 60%. But the way to outgrow it is by focusing on economic growth.
But what do those pronouncements mean for you and me? The economic team is pulling many levers, while there's monetary tightening on one side, which makes paying car and home loans a real pain. There's expansionary fiscal spending, but targeted at those who are hurting the most from expensive foods and fuel.
Marcos, concurrently serving as Agriculture Secretary, sends a strong signal that despite the belt tightening, there will be more funds to address the food crisis. Lois Calderon, CNN, Philippines.
The local currency sunk to 56 pesos and 37 centavos today, the weakest since November 2004. The lowest the peso has ever been was in October 2004 at 56 pesos and 44 centavos. Now, as the country marks the 6th anniversary of the historic arbitral ruling on the West Philippine Sea, more Filipinos are optimistic that the Marcos administration will do better in asserting the rights of the country. Several nations also express hope the change of leadership will lead to strategic partnerships based on the rule of law. Tristan Odalo reports.
The Philippine government rejects any attempt to undermine the 2016 arbitral ruling, insisting that the findings of the historic decision are final, conclusive, and indisputable. Foreign Affairs Secretary Enrique Manalo says that the arbitral award already refutes claims based on historic rights in the South China Sea. The DFA chief adds that the ruling also upheld the Philippines' sovereign rights and jurisdiction in its exclusive economic zone. The DFA also welcomes the growing number of nations supporting the arbitral award, which is now part of international law. Meantime, longtime military ally the United States says it stands with the Philippines in upholding the arbitral award. The U.S. adds that the ruling is final and binding and that China should respect the international law. The U.S. adds that any attack on Philippine armed forces or public vessels will invoke the Mutual Defense Treaty.
We remain optimistic that the best way forward is still diplomacy. Nevertheless, we are prepared to deter or deter aggression.
Apart from the US, the United Kingdom, Australia, Japan, and the European Union also expressed support for the Philippines in asserting the arbitral award.
The European Union aims to contribute to the stability, security, and prosperity of the Indo-Pacific region, while promoting democracy, the rule of law, human rights, and international law.
In a Pulse Asia survey commissioned by the Strat-based ADR Institute last June, majority of Filipinos want the Marcos administration to assert our rights in the West Philippine Sea.
Ang nais ng sambayan ng Pilipino ay manindigan ang bagong pamahalaan, panindigan ng ating what we won 6 years ago na may siguro lumalabas may pagkukulang ang previous government.
China repeatedly insists that the arbitral award is illegal and therefore null and void, and that the tension in the South China Sea is just a fraction of the overall Philippine-Chinese relations. Tristan Udalo, CNN Philippines.
Fishermen are also stepping forward, telling the government to uphold the country's rights in the West Philippine Sea. Fisherfolk group Pamalakaya staged protests aboard their boats at the Laguna de Bay and Manila Bay. Pamalakaya wants the Marcos administration to assert the Hague ruling to defend the country's, quote, national sovereignty and territorial waters. President Marcos has said he would not compromise the country's sovereignty in any way. In Japan, crowds gather in the streets in the capital, Tokyo, to pay their last respects to former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. The hearse carrying Abe's remains left the centuries-old Zojoji Temple, where a private funeral service was held for family and close friends. Abe's remains traveled from the temple to the Kirigaya Funeral Hall for cremation. The former Japanese leader was assassinated while giving a speech in the city of Nara on Friday. Back here at home, you can still fold the new 1,000 peso bill despite viral posts saying otherwise. The Bangko Sentral reminds retailers and banks to keep accepting folded banknotes, whether polymer or paper, for payment. This after a netizen claimed that a mall refused to accept her folded 1,000 peso bill. In a statement, SM Supermalls denied this, telling the public that folded banknotes are still accepted in its stores, except those that are mutilated, stapled, and ripped from the removal of staple wire. More stories ahead. A sneak peek at a stunning view of the early universe in a first-of-its-kind image from NASA. And in sports, one more match for the Philippine women's football team as they go for a sweep in the group stage of the AFF Women's Championship. You're watching Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
Dangerous out there. Buti na lang, there's locally super fruits with 3 kinds of fruits that are super in many ways. First, there's our dragon fruit drink na mayaman sa prebiotics that aid digestion. Second, there's her passion fruit drink with no added sugar and high in vitamin C. Lastly, we have our mangosteen drink, good for your heart. All superfruits contain more antioxidants than your average fruit to help protect your immune system. Superfruit for super you.
Disruptions, we are back to celebrate World Gin Day. Our World Gin Day celebration consists of a month-long activities highlighted by a media launch on June 10 to kick off the nationwide Gin Bar Crawl Challenge that starts on June 11. And tonight, as we kick off our World Gin Day celebration, the country's top professional mixologists will take center stage to craft one-of-a-kind cocktails based on Ginebra San Miguel gin products.
Actually, for us mixologists, it is highly adaptable, uniquely versatile, and it takes on many different strengths, flavors, and nuances.
Gin's clear, pure quality is derived from a rigorous distillation process that brings out the best flavors. Gin is in. So let's drink, enjoy, and let the celebrations be gin.
You're watching Newsnight. In football. Can the Philippines cap off the group round of the AFF Women's Championship with a flawless record? For their last Group A match, the Filipinos are facing powerhouse Thailand later at 7 p.m. at the Rizal Memorial Stadium in Manila. The Philippine team will work to avenge its loss to the squad in the Southeast Asian Games back in May. Filipinas already secured a semifinals ticket for the AFF tournament after 4 wins. From sports to infinity and beyond, the first full-color image from the largest space telescope in history is here. U.S. President Joe Biden released this photograph from NASA's James Webb Telescope during a preview event at the White House. This is the deepest picture of the universe and is the telescope's first deep-field view of incredibly old and distant galaxies, some of them never before seen. Moving on to entertainment, members of the Pinoy pop sensation BINI have been busy recently dropping the music video for their chart-topping song Lagi and preparing for the Tugatog Pinoy Music Festival on July 15th. Amid their success, the 8-piece ensemble tells CNN Philippines their flawless group dynamic was not an overnight success.
From different parts of the Philippines po, may taga Cebu, Bohol, Nueva Vizcaya, Isabela, everywhere po. So, parang lumaki po kami with different beliefs po, perspective in life. So, nung nagkita-kita po kami at first, hindi po kami naging okay kasi syempre, iba-iba po kami ng kinalakihan. Ngayon po na magkakasama na po kami for almost 3 years na and counting. So, mas nabibuild na po yung chemistry namin sa isa't isa.
This one's for fans of the popular American reality show RuPaul's Drag Race. Actor Paolo Ballesteros will host the local adaptation Drag Race Philippines. The show begins streaming August 17th. From drag queens to pageant queens, the country is among the top 3 in the Miss Supranational Talent Competition alongside India and Japan. Philippine vet Alison Black presented a stunning ballet piece for her entry. Find out if Alison is bringing home the crown from Poland with the Miss Supranational pageant airing here on CNN Philippines this Saturday, July 16 at 12 noon. And stay tuned for Mr. Supranational showing the next day. And that is it for now. Join me again on News.ph at 7 p.m. I'm Pia Ontiveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
RPN Radio Philippines Network. DXTV Dipolo Radio Ronda.
The future of the pandemic is looking a bit clearer. For many, this means it's time to start the family they may have been delaying. In fact, some experts predict a baby boom on the way. But from morning sickness to adopting a nutritious diet, pregnancy can be overwhelming, especially for new moms. So in the program today, we'll walk you through what to expect when you're expecting. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez and welcome to Med Talk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. The key to a strong baby is a healthy pregnancy. Our guests are here today to tell us more about this. With us is Dr. Maria Linda Quevedo. She's an OB gynecologist from the Asian Hospital and Medical Center and the head of maternal fetal medicine. We're also joined by Ms. Alodia Mercado, who is a clinical psychologist from AMAC Psychological Services. Thank you both for joining us on this program today. Now, whether you're having your first, second, or even third child, deciding to have a baby is a very big step for any family. Now, Miss D, what are some factors to consider kaya before deciding that a baby is going to be added to that family? What are some of the emotions that first-time parents would normally feel at this moment?
Hindi nakakagulat that women's preconception desire of conceiving a child is very linked to their values, to their goals, their employment, financial and emotional circumstances. No? And of course, the kind of preference of their partner has. All of this have to come on a first issue of pregnancy. It is very important na handa ang isang babae bago siya magbuntis.
Is there a point where someone can really say, you know what, ready na ako to have a baby?
Sociologically speaking, there is no exact time or date no kung kailan tayo talagang sobrang ready when it comes to pregnancy. Napakahalaga na mai-posisyon natin yung isang taong magbubuntis doon sa kapasidad niya to develop a fetus inside her womb. Like physically, no, ready ba yung katawan niya? Meron ba siyang condition emotionally that she has to actually deal with before getting pregnant?
So let's talk about that naman, the physical readiness ng isang babae to have a baby, because having a baby changes a lot of things, not just for the woman involved, but for the couple. So having a healthy pregnancy begins even before you get pregnant. For one, you need to understand your fertility as well as your ovulation cycles. Now, Dr. Quevedo, let's discuss that. Why should expecting moms track their fertility?
Yes, assuming they have a menstrual cycle, we all know that peak fertility for every woman would be about 20 to 24 weeks age of gestation. So by the time the woman reaches 40, sometimes fertility drops as much as 95%. And like Ms. D said, nowadays, women have the option now to delay reproduction. Normally, a couple with unprotected coitus for 1 year should get pregnant. And particularly for women beyond 35 weeks age of gestation, if they have unprotected coitus for more than 6 months and nothing happens, again, this is the time to refer to your favorite reproductive endocrinologist.
Dr. Quevedo, you bring up a good point. You mentioned how if in 6 months there's unprotected coitus and they're trying to have a baby, hindi nangyayari, one of those factors was stress. Stress at work, stress at home. How big of a factor can stress influence the fertility of a woman?
I cannot give you a ballpark figure on this, but definitely it factors in greatly in the ovulatory cycle of a woman.
Now, Dr. D, let's talk about stress for that matter. It's really popular, especially here in the culture here in the Philippines, na kapag may bagong kasal, they expect na may baby soon after. Maybe a year, maybe 2 years after kasal, may baby na. Does this put some undue stress on the mother or on the couple, leading to even more difficulty in trying to conceive?
Yes, Doc Freddy, no, napaka-importante ng role of stress and stressors sa kapasidad ng isang babae to conceive a baby, no? And these pressures going on in the environment of a couple or from an individual just like a woman is actually making an increase in the release of cortisol level or these hormones. This actually is a very great factor or an important factor in one's capacity to produce a baby, Doc Freddy.
I'd like to ask Dr. Quevedo, so once the woman is now pregnant or she has conceived the baby, how soon should she get her body ready in terms of nutrition?
Well, actually, preparation for pregnancy should be starting in the preconception period, no? It is best that the woman is in prime condition before she attempts to get pregnant. This would lower the risk for complications for both the mother and the developing fetus. And she would be psychologically prepared for pregnancy. So, prior to getting pregnant, as much as possible, she should reach ideal body weight and she should already be properly immunized, no? Of course, the woman also, if she has medical conditions, this should be addressed and stabilized prior to being pregnant. And she should already start with her supplements such as her folic acid to which is imperative for the development of normal central nervous system for the developing fetus.
That's true, Dr. Quevedo. But despite following all of that and trying their best to be physically prepared, sometimes complications can't be avoided or prevented during pregnancy. When we return, what to do if they arise. We're your partner in healthcare. This is MedTalk Health Talk. Today, we're talking about steps for a healthy pregnancy and a healthy baby-to-be. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez and welcome back to MedTalk Health Talk. A common condition that affects a lot of pregnant women is morning sickness. Now, this usually occurs within the first few months of pregnancy or may progress further. And although it's called morning sickness, it can happen at any time of the day. Dr. Quevedo, why does this happen? What should a first-time mom expect?
Well, you call this hyperemesis gravidarum, no? It may be so bad that the patient may need hospitalization for rehydration. We would advise these women to avoid taking 3 full meals but having small, frequent feedings.
A follow-up question to that. With many bodily changes, a woman who is preparing for a baby sometimes often reports that their sense of smell heightens. Why does this occur naman?
It is because of the hormones of pregnancy. So we try to tell them to avoid very tasty fried foods. It's better that they take bland foods, and sipping ice chips would even help.
And with that in mind, Ms. D, Dr. Quevedo mentioned that a lot of these changes that a woman carrying a baby may feel for the first time can be overwhelming because of the hormones. Gaano ka-importante that she feels na hindi lang siya yung na-challenge sa ganitong process?
The misery that every woman has to go through in morning sickness may cause a lot of mental and psychological conditions. No? Ilan sa mga sintomas ito yung isolation. And because of this, the isolation could be the cause to develop certain serious psychological problems related to depression. Because of this, sometimes they are confused about how their body is actually functioning during the term of pregnancy. And it is quite important that the partner is actually able to suffice the needs emotionally, no?
Now, Dr. Quevedo, let's talk about preeclampsia because it's one of the most common high-risk conditions during pregnancy. What is it? How does it happen?
Well, preeclampsia is new onset hypertension, no? What is important is we identify those women at risk for developing preeclampsia. These are women who are more than 40 years of age. This is the first-time moms, or they have multiple gestations, or they have pre-existing diabetes mellitus, and so forth and so on.
Now, I'd like to talk about, Dr. Quevedo, some of the risk factors that can influence the health of the baby, and that is cigarette smoking and alcohol drinking, for that matter. Now, how big of an impact can this have on the baby?
During the entire pregnancy and preconception, we already advise the women to stop smoking and to stop drinking alcohol. We know that taking of alcohol can give your fetal alcohol syndrome, and this will result to small babies. There may be facial deformities in the developing fetus. For smokers, likewise, you will have small babies. You may have sudden infant death syndrome. There may be fetal digital anomalies. So to avoid all of this, you have to advise the women to stop smoking, and even the fathers.
Now, Dr. Quevedo, let's go back to preeclampsia because this is the most common complication here in the Philippines when it comes to moms and especially first-time moms. Is there a screening process in order to catch this early?
Well, the easiest way is to do the mean arterial pressure, no? We check if it's higher than 90, probably this woman would have preeclampsia. And there are also higher screening serum tests such as placental growth factor.
Now, Dr. Quevedo, is preeclampsia a risk greater for the mom or for the fetus?
It's about 50-50, no? If the blood pressure is not controlled, she can go into eclampsia and she could even have a cerebrovascular accident, no?
Miss D, Dr. Quevedo brings up a good point that we're talking about all of these risk factors and they are ever present. So I'd like to talk about the extremes on this end. Those who've undergone either a miscarriage or a complication through preeclampsia where the fetus was lost. So they have so many different feelings. It not only affects the mother, but those loved ones around her. They don't know, they aren't sure on how to be supportive. So just an insight on what is okay to do. Is it okay to feel all of this stages of grief maybe?
Yeah. Yes, Doc Freddy, when it comes to losing something or someone, no, we have to undergo that stage of grief like what you said a while ago. We cannot expect a woman to automatically accept what actually happened to her. There is a process for it. So the first thing that you have to do, support for this woman, is just to listen. Let this woman express, and it is very important to process these negative thoughts. It starts with acceptance, and the acceptance actually run for around 6 months, Doc Freddy. But if the symptoms are still there, we have to accept the fact that this woman has to be referred to a professional.
Now, when we return, additional tips in order to maintain a healthy pregnancy. Your health is our mission here on MedTalk Health Talk. We'll be right back. Dr. Freddy Gomez, and this is MedTalk Health Talk, where your care always comes first. Starting a family is one of life's greatest joys, and a healthy pregnancy means a healthy baby. But with so much information out there, it can be hard to determine the best healthcare practices. Sometimes these moms may get progressively uncomfortable, and that is only but natural. Now let's continue the discussion on how the pregnancy can be both beneficial for the mom as well as for the baby. Dr. Quevedo, we've talked about a lot of good benefits on how the new mom should prepare herself for being pregnant. Now let's talk about some of the things wherein a lot of viewers may be unsure of. One of that is exercise. Is it okay for someone who is pregnant to exercise? And if so, ano yung at one point should they lessen or even stop?
Exercise is allowable during pregnancy, particularly low-impact exercises. But there are certain conditions wherein exercise is absolutely contraindicated, such as when a woman has cardiac disease, or if she has uncontrolled preeclampsia, or if she has persistent second and third trimester bleeding.
Dr. Quevedo, how about sexual intercourse for those couples? Are there any do's and don'ts in terms of stages in the pregnancy?
Sexual intercourse is allowable so long as the woman is not in danger of having preterm delivery, nor is she bleeding.
Now, Ms. D, earlier we talked about a lot of the emotional journey that a new mother can undergo. What about the supportive partner in this situation? What kind of acknowledgement should the partner have in this, either be the husband or the life partner?
If we're talking about women who are really challenged physically and mentally during pregnancy, I would recommend light stress in their relationship. So if there are serious concerns in the family or in the partnership or in the relationship, they must be able to understand that there is actually a benefit for taking things lightly. But of course, we don't want to be toxic positive here. I would like to account the importance of communication here. It is not about what you say, but it's actually how you say those issues and concerns to the pregnant woman.
Now, Dr. Quevedo, while undergoing pregnancy, especially during the advanced weeks, the mother may feel a lot of problems when it comes to joints and pains, especially low back pain for that matter. How can these things be addressed
Well, low back pains, of course, you have the added weight of the gravid uterus during pregnancy. There can be some belly support which are available in the market, and she should be encouraged to rest during daytime.
Dr. Quevedo, I ask this because of this follow-up question. When it comes to medications, many other doctors in different specialties are very careful in giving medications, especially to pregnant women. It always has to be cleared with the obstetrician first. So my question for you is, when it comes to pain relievers, should they hold off first and seek advice before they take any pain reliever?
Well, low back pains, you have to diagnose first what is the cause, no? She might be having premature contractions, in which case we give some uterine relaxants, and it might be caused by some medical conditions such as urinary tract infection, so we have to clear that up.
One more question with regards to that. You mentioned urinary tract infections. Do urinary tract infections, Dr. Quevedo, increase when a woman is pregnant?
We have to address if there is a urinary tract infection present, because this may become an ascending infection intrautero and may adversely affect the developing fetus. So we have to address all infections. Asymptomatic bacteriuria, which is urinary tract infection, which the mom doesn't feel anything at all, has to be checked periodically. And it's pretty common in pregnancy.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. But before we go, Dr. Quevedo, do you have any additional tips?
We have a lot of moms who are still undernourished. So it is imperative that you have your daily recommended allowances for your micronutrients and your macronutrients. And it would be best that if you seek a consultation with your obstetrician gynecologist to ensure a healthy baby and pregnancy.
And of course, Ms. D, before we go, any advice from you?
To all the pregnant women, seek medical support for access of correct information, extend awareness, be aware of the changes in your body, communicate how you feel with others, understand that experiencing negative emotions is part of the process, reduce unhealthy lifestyle, and of course, enrich your daily life by spicing up your routine, by creating your passion, learning new things, and of course, connecting with people.
We hope these tips help new parents and first-time pregnant moms face the changes that will be coming their way. Thank you so much, Dr. Maria Linda Quevedo and Ms. Alodia Mercado, for being with us today. Your tips and insights will definitely help a lot of our viewers in their journey towards a family. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and thank you for watching Med Talk Health Talk. We'll see you again next time.